Wanted in Gotham, New York City police now looking for 3 suspects after a $6 million jewelry heist. They were caught on surveillance video at a jewelry store in Midtown Manhattan. Police say they used a crowbar and a hammer to get in, then took jewelry from 2 safes. When they noticed one of the cameras, they hit it, blacked out the feed. Happened around 10 o'clock Saturday night as many were celebrating New Year's Eve only blocks away. Wow! Anyone with information has to contact the NYPD department ASAP. Is that a good time to steal $6 million?
On their part, right?
Everybody's looking the other way.
The police's focus was on Times Square, but it's too bad that guy looked directly into the camera before he figured out that he needed to take it out, because that's a pretty clear shot of whoever he is. So, all right. Long lines and some major delays across the country of one of the busiest travel days of the year. Look at this nightmare. Holy cannoli. Computer outages being blamed, and lots of issues came up because of the U.S. Customs procedures and all of their difficulties last night. At the same time, a lot of people obviously were coming back from holiday vacations, and they were none too happy.
We found long lines. I mean, ginormously long lines. And they weren't letting the kids, families with kids go through. None of that. Very, very long.
Ginormously long, in fact. Laura Engel is live at JFK Airport with more. So, Laura, what do we know about what happened here?
Hi, Martha. Well, right now it's simply being called a computer glitch, but it felt a lot worse than that for thousands of travelers who not only had to endure those really long lines you saw, but they were experiencing heat. There's not exactly a window that you can crack open when you're in customs. Some reports of people passing out, vomiting, and needing medical assistance. We want to show you more of this video. Just take a look at these lines travelers had to endure. Scenes like this played out here at JFK, at Newark, Atlanta, Boston, D.C., and L.A. These people were packed like sardines on their feet for hours at a time, and in some cases vary after long international flights. Now, one of the chief complaints from travelers is that no one knew what was going on. They say that there was not a lot of information being shared, and there seemed to be a lack of organization. Now, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection's processing system went down for about 4 hours between 5 and 9 Eastern last night. The CBP says there's no indication of malice. They are looking now at a cause. They had to resort to processing people manually, which means by hand, paperwork. John Phillips, we spoke to him today. He sent us these pictures from Miami International as he was stuck in line with his wife. He says he witnessed some passengers hyperventilating, others needing medical assistance, and things are back to normal here, and a lot of people are happy about that.
Wow.
Back to you.
Well, we've heard that we have third world airports in some of these areas in our own country, and it kind of looked like it yesterday. Laura, thank you very much.
So Donald Trump's already taken on Carrier and Boeing. Now add General Motors to that list. What's going on there? We'll tell you. It's happening just moments ago. Also, what should the U.S. do about Russia? Are they a newly aggressive enemy or a potential partner in taming a chaotic and dangerous world? All that coming up top of the hour. Right back after this.
So President-elect Donald Trump turning his attention this morning in a sort of whole group of tweets that came out over the past few days. But this one is about General Motors. It accuses them of making cars in Mexico and selling them over the border here in the United States. But GM is firing back, saying that it is just not true. Welcome to a brand new hour now of America's Newsroom, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum.
And I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. Happy New Year, everybody. That cruise has made it 2 plants, one in Ohio, one in Mexico. The president-elect taking exception to Mexico-made models, saying that he says are sold in the U.S. This morning, tweeting the following. General Motors is saying Mexican-made model of Chevy Cruze to U.S. car dealers, tax-free across border. Made in USA or pay big border tax, end quote.
So what's going on here? Melissa Francis is co-host of After the Bell on Fox Business Network, and she joins us now. Good to have you here. Happy New Year, Melissa. Good to see you. So he's at it again. Sending a pretty big message.
Absolutely. And so first of all, let's deal with the facts of the situation, because GM seems to be saying it's not true. But if you look at what they're saying, they say GM builds the Chevy Cruze hatchback for global markets in Mexico with a small number sold in the U.S. Our brain room looked into it. We looked at the Wall Street Journal, a bunch of other sources. They say certain versions, including the hatchback, are imported to the U.S. from a plant in Mexico. What everybody seems to agree on here with all these statements is that this version, the hatchback, is made in Mexico and sold back into the U.S. That may be a very small number, which is what GM is trying to say. They're saying it's only a few. It's not that many, but that's a little bit like when my son says to me, I only hit him a little bit.
Right.
I'm like, no, that doesn't change the fact. He's pointing out cars are made there and sold back, and he doesn't like it. He's sending a message.
And when he goes after a huge company like GM, he's sending a message to every other company who doesn't want a tweet with their company name in it coming from Donald Trump because they don't want the attention drawn to them. And I think it does impact decision making with other companies, right?
It absolutely does. So this tweet says, here is what I care about. CEOs, take note. This is what matters to me. And I'm going to be bugging you on this. And you better check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because I'm going to follow these companies that are selling back into the U.S. And I do not like this. And that starts the negotiation. Now, reporters, I think, are going to get lost down the rabbit hole of exactly how many cars is it? Is it 10? Is it 100? Is it 1,000? That's not the point, I think. Factually, he was correct. GM's going to say it's a very teeny number. I guess you at home can decide whether or not that matters, but he's tone from the top. That's what CEOs do. He's saying, this is the tone. This is what I care about. Look at it.
So what about the reaction from American corporations who say, look, our responsibility is to our shareholders, and we're doing a good job. We have, manufacturing that's happening in the United States. We've done some of it in Mexico because it helps our bottom line.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's what they say to him. And if you think about it logically, so a car is a very heavy object. You want to manufacture it right next to where you're going to sell it. So the fact that they're shipping it back into the U.S., and I would guess to southern parts of the country, but the fact that they're shipping it back in says the cost of production is that much lower there. And you say to Donald Trump, look, you're a businessman. Make it worth my while to have it here. And by the way, companies would rather manufacture in the U.S. and sell here. It's closer. It's cheaper. The quality of production is better.
Trump has had stuff manufactured in China for just this very reason. I mean, that's going to be pointed back at him and also members of his family as well.
Absolutely. And they're going to say, look, we made it elsewhere because economically it made sense. Make it make sense for us to manufacture it here, make the tax law good, make energy cheap, make the regulatory environment better, which is all things that kind of everyone agrees on and wants to do. And he wants to do that. It's not like they're putting him over a barrel saying you must lower the tax rate. This is all good for business altogether. But he's getting their attention and saying, look, we're starting over on day one.
I mean, it sounds like he's offering them a package that will be appealing to them. All the reasons that they've left the country, regulations and high taxes, he's trying to reverse so that it works for both sides.
It's good for Americans. I mean, it's good for jobs. It's good for the economy. It's good for consumers. If it works, it's good for everybody. But he's got to follow through.
Watch the Cruise hatchback coming back to this side of the border. Melissa, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Great to see you.
You too.
So from the Hill now, a brand new Congress going to work later today. Republicans pushing an aggressive agenda as well. Democrats, for their part, vowing to put up a fight with plans to slam the brakes on at least 8 of the cabinet nominees thus far. Incoming White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer telling us last hour that he would like Democrats to play by the same rules now as they did 8 years ago.
I would refer Senator Schumer to Senator Schumer of 2008. We are abiding by the same standard that Senator Schumer had for the Obama nominees, including Senator Senator Clinton and others. He seems to want to change the rules because his party didn't win. But I think we will continue to abide by the rules that Senator Schumer and Reid had no problem with in 2008.
So Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is going to have a busy couple of weeks here live on the Hill. Mike, good morning. Let's start there.
Well, Bill, good morning to you. The incoming Senate Democratic leader is threatening to slow up the Trump cabinet confirmation process. Fox News has confirmed these are the 8 people that Senator Chuck Schumer has told Majority Leader Mitch McConnell that Democrats plan to target. President-elect Donald Trump's picks for state, Justice, Department of Education, and to head the Office of Management and Budget. Democrats also plan to closely scrutinize Mr. Trump's choices for Health and Human Services, Labor, Treasury, and the EPA. Republicans are noting the swift confirmation President Obama's cabinet nominees and those with cabinet level rank when he first took office 8 years ago, allowing him the opportunity to assemble his team quickly. 7 of Mr. Obama's nominees were confirmed on January 20th, 2009, the day he was sworn into office. 5 more were confirmed by the end of his first week. Republicans are also noting the comments made by people like Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia back in February 2013, when Mr. Obama's second term was beginning, saying, quote, "I think we owe deference to a president for choices to executive positions." And I think that is a very important thing to grapple with. The American public choose someone to be president. They're giving that individual a mandate to govern, and that mandate includes the assembly of the team that the president feels is the appropriate team. So we have Republicans here in the Senate essentially saying to their Democrat colleagues, let's show the same courtesy and seriousness with which the Senate considered Mr. Obama's inner circle.
Wow.
Bill?
Thank you, Mike. Mike Emanuel there on the Hill. For more on all this now, Fox News digital policy editor Chris Steyerwalt. Sir, good day to you. Woot. And a brand new year. Chuck Schumer said the following: if Republicans think they can quickly jam through a whole slate of nominees without a fair hearing process, they're sorely mistaken. Now, what is this? Is this going to be a battle, or is this just bluster?
A little of both. Democrats will pick their battles. They'll choose the times that they want to really dig their heels in and try to thwart one of these nominees. And those will be situational to a certain degree. Somebody like Jeff Sessions, let's take for example, yes, they're going to make noise. Yes, there's going to be an effort to try to hurt him, certainly to try to do a dry run for the expected Supreme Court nomination that'll be coming soon. But Sessions gets through, we assume. Then we have somebody like Rex Tillerson. If the situation with Russia and Russia allegedly hacking the emails of Democratic campaign operatives, if that's not resolved, if Trump's relationship with Russia is still a live round in the chamber and he's fighting with the intelligence community, could Rex Tillerson's nomination process bog down? You betcha. So the Democrats will wait for the places that they can to try to turn public opinion in their favor and slow these guys down.
Well, President Obama goes to the Hill tomorrow. The last time he was there was St. Patty's Day, March of last year. So he will try and get a defense together for Obamacare, right? That's part of it. You have the Assange stuff that's out there today with Sean Hannity, who's coming up in 20 minutes on that. Does the administration then show its hand on the evidence with Russia and hacking or not?
I think you will see more. I think as we get closer, you will see more. I think the ball's in Trump's court right now. He says he knows things that other people do not. He is privy to special information that he said he would make available today or tomorrow. Trump is going to get a briefing. There is a report that is coming out. I suspect when we see the report, people who are, we will finally have some clarity on this so that we can satisfy reasonable people as to what really happened here.
Okay, I think one of the more intriguing stories out there is Trump versus Obama, or Obama versus Trump. And just a moment ago, the president-elect was tweeting again about this investigation about whether or not Republicans have dissed the ethics committee. And Trump's saying with all that Congress has to work on, do they really have to make the weakening of the independent ethics watchdog as unfair as it is? Maybe their number one act and priority, focus on tax reform, he says. Healthcare, he says, and so many other things of far greater importance. What is the effect, Chris, 30,000 feet here, of these two men publicly going at it to with President Obama trying to cement his legacy at a time when the incoming president is trying to perhaps get himself out of maybe a lot of jams based on policy, backed into the corner? How is that now developing in Washington, D.C.?
The regret among Democrats for having enabled and empowered broad expansions of executive authority, things that they would have never countenanced with George W. Bush or a Republican in office, is palpable. Because remember, pen and a phone, this is a guy who, the current president is a guy who Democrats defended keeping a kill list of people who he wanted assassinated by drone. That included an American. They fought for the right to extrajudicial killing of Americans suspected of terrorism. Other broad expansions of presidential power that they've used on immigration and other things. Now they find that they're turning the keys over to somebody who they would have never imagined, could have never imagined would be president of the United States, and they will have to deal with the consequences. The whole country will have to deal with the consequences, but they will have to live in the reality that what happens in an empowered executive Trump administration is in large part or substantial part their doing.
Oh, more to come. Wait an hour. See you, Chris. Happy New Year.
Yeah, man.
Nice
Happy New Year.
You bet.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange telling Sean Hannity that Russia, the government at least, was not the source for information that was stolen and hacked Democratic emails, a claim that directly contradicts U.S. intel. We're going to have more on that from Sean Hannity's exclusive when we talk to Sean himself, coming up moments away.
Also, first, friend or foe, some Republicans split over how to handle Russia, and a hearing later this week could get heated. Senate Homeland Security Chair Ron Johnson is live on that in a moment.
And an unruly passenger goes off on a flight attendant. Have you seen this video? Forced an emergency landing. We'll show you what happened when we come back.
Do you know how cool it would be to have the airplane turned around because of me? You're going to do that? You do that. I'm being so impolite, aren't I, fat?
Republicans divided over what to do about Russia. One side, including the president-elect, arguing that Moscow could become a necessary ally, but others consider Putin to be an intense threat to everything that Americans believe in, and they want tougher action taken against Moscow.
When we get home, that we're going to do more against Russia. They tried to interfere in our elections. They're undercutting democracies throughout this entire region, more sanctions on their energy and financial sectors to let them know that enough is enough.
Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, joins us now. Senator, welcome. Good to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, Martha. Happy New Year.
Great to have you with us. Happy New Year to you too, sir. I just want to quickly play something from Sean Spicer, the incoming press secretary for the administration, when he was asked about which side people should be on when it comes to Russia. Watch.
But the fact is that this administration tried to have a reset with Russia at the beginning, and it failed. I understand that didn't work out too well, but this administration understands the importance of Russia and putting America's interests first in the geopolitical climate that we live in. We will do that, and this president, I think, is going to understands that it's in America's interest to have a very, very fruitful relationship with Russia.
With the administration, is it wise to have a fruitful relationship with Russia?
Well, Martha, I kind of categorize our relationship with with other nations in four categories: allies, friendly rivals, unfriendly adversaries, and enemies. Right now, unfortunately, I think Russia is an unfriendly adversary. It would be nice if they were at least a friendly rival. It'd be good for world peace and stability. So you have to approach these situations from a standpoint of reality. What are the facts? Recognizing that Russia is probably about a tenth the size of our economy, and yet their influence has been increasing in the world because of our weak and feckless foreign policy. So we have to first strengthen our economy. We need to approach Russia with strength and resolve. You achieve peace through strength. And so, again, it's a messy, messy world. I'm not in any way, shape, or form denying what Vladimir Putin represents. There have been close to 30 political assassinations under his leadership. He's invaded Crimea, eastern Ukraine, Georgia. We need to be incredibly wary of him. But again, his influence is rising. Take a look at what's happened in Syria, the slaughter of hundreds of thousands of Syrians. That's pretty much with Russians' aid. So we need to understand who he is as an unfriendly adversary. I don't want him to become an enemy, but we need to work with him from a position of strength.
All right, I want to show you two other things. This is a tweet from Donald Trump on December 30th. He said, "Great move on the delay by Vladimir Putin." He's talking about the dust-up that happened with the diplomats that were sent home from the United States. He says, "I always knew he was very smart." And then we go on to Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who is the head of the National Security Council for the incoming president. "We have to begin to understand," he says, "that this is not an east-west world, folks. This is actually more of a north-south world." He is arguing that it's Europe, the United States, and Russia against Islamic radicalism, essentially. Do you agree with that?
Well, there's certainly an element of truth to that. Listen, there are more than 15,000 nuclear warheads in the world. Russia has more than 7,000. They are modernizing their arsenal. We've got a little less than 7,000. We're not modernizing ours. So there's just a basic reality. Their influence is growing, even though they're about a tenth the size of our economy. So obviously, Vladimir Putin's a smart guy. He's utilizing nationalism, this adventurism around the world to solidify his position within his own nation. So you have to look at those realities and deal with them, as such.
So what do you think is going to happen with Rex Tillerson? Will he be approved by the Senate for Secretary of State?
I certainly hope so. I met with him, I guess, 2 weeks ago. Incredibly intelligent person, great background, wonderful experience. He's a global, player. He understands the economies. He understands how important energy resources are. He knows Vladimir Putin as well as a number of other world leaders. I think he's got the kind of experience and background that it will be excellent as a Secretary of State.
So it sounds like you've been sort of persuaded a little bit to open up to this line of thinking, that we might be better off with a more open relationship or some kind of détente with Russia.
Oh, well, first of all, this is the way I've always felt. I don't want them to be an unfriendly adversary or enemy. I'd rather have them be a friendly rival, but I realize the only way we accomplish that is through strength, economic strength, military strength. We should have provided Ukraine, for example, lethal defensive weaponry. We authorized $300 million. This administration said no.
Yeah. All right. Senator Johnson, always good to have you here, sir. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
You too.
It's been a deadly year for the city of Chicago, a homicide number that is staggering, and the mayor there is under fire. What Mr. Trump thinks Rahm Emanuel should do to get crime under control.
Plus, did you see this? This is so frightening. A toddler trapped underneath a heavy dresser that fell on top of him. Wait until you see how this young boy was set free. This is awful. A dresser fell over on a toddler, but in this story, the twin brother came to the rescue and security camera footage captured the whole thing. And this is awful. And this, kids climb all over everything, right?
Everything.
Oh my God, I can't
Especially the boys.
watch that. So they were climbing and it wasn't secured to the wall. It wasn't that high and it fell over sideways. So it trapped one of them underneath and he was worried about his little twin brother. So this little guy lifted it. Adrenaline works wonders, does it not?
Go, man. Go.
The dresser. Go. Here he goes. Yay. Let's watch him roll out because we watched the bad part. We got to watch the good part. Ready? And he's, oh, thank goodness. And so the parents probably heard about this from the kids. And then they actually went back and looked at the security video. And they realized that the little boy was telling the truth, that he lifted that thing off of his brother.
You see the tears in his eyes coming
They're
down.
okay.
Good for his brother. Well done,
Scary.
right?
Yep, good ending.
25 minutes past the hour. Got a Fox News alert. Dylan Roof now will serve as his own attorney in the sentencing phase of his trial, a judge ruling incompetent to do that. He was convicted about a month ago of killing 9 people in Charleston, South Carolina. Sentencing begins tomorrow. Jonathan Seri is live now outside the courthouse. And what defense does Dylan Roof plan to present there, Jonathan?
Well, Bill, Dylan Roof is really acting against the advice of the judge and his now sideline defense team. That's his decision to act as his own attorney. Dylan Roof has indicated that he does plan to offer his own opening statement, that he will make a closing argument. But he says during this hearing he plans to call no witnesses and to present no mitigating evidence. Prosecutors, on the other hand, plan to call as many as 38 people to testify, including relatives of the 9 parishioners who died after the white supremacist opened fire at Emmanuel AME Church back in June of 2015, Bill.
So what does Roof and his decision to dismiss his attorneys and defense team, and he's gone back and forth on this, by the way, as you know, throughout the course of the trial, what does it say about him?
You know, it really depends on who you speak with. Just before the long holiday weekend, his defense team entered a motion asking for a delay in his competency hearing. They were arguing that, quote, this defendant's announcement that he will not defend himself against the death penalty raises in especially stark fashion the question of whether the defendant is actually unable to defend himself. At a minimum, it suggests that he may lack the mental capacity to assume the role of his own lawyer, unquote. But Atlanta-based criminal defense attorney Philip Holloway says for someone like Dylan Roof, who really has little, if anything, to argue in his favor, acting as his own attorney and directly addressing the jurors may represent a strategy. Take a listen.
About the only thing he can do, and it's sort of a Hail Mary, is to stand in front of the jury himself and make his opening statement and make the closing argument, because they get to hear from him personally. And if he has any hope of swaying the jurors, it's doing it that way without being subject to cross-examination.
And when he's making his opening and closing statements, the judge has imposed strict guidelines on Dylan Roof. At no time will he be allowed to approach the jurors or witnesses, Bill.
Wow, Jonathan Seri, thank you for that. Watching that trial in Charleston, South Carolina.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange telling Sean Hannity that it was not the state of Russia.
We can say, we have said repeatedly over the last 2 months that our source is not the Russian government, and it is not a state party.
Yeah. That's what I meant, state party, or an act of the Russian government directly. Assange saying that President Obama is blaming the Kremlin to delegitimize the Trump administration. Sean Hannity will join us in just a moment with more of his exclusive interview.
Also, how American cities are getting ready for a self-driving country. Can they make highways smarter? Now this exclusive interview with Sean Hannity and WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. The interview conducted yesterday in London for a period of 90 minutes. Among the many things they talked about, Assange says the Russian government was not the source for emails published by WikiLeaks.
Can you say to the American people unequivocally that you did not get this information about the DNC, John Podesta's emails? Can you tell the American people 1,000% you did not get it from Russia or anybody associated with Russia?
We can say, we have said repeatedly over the last 2 months that our source is not the Russian government and it is not a state party.
That is one of the many headlines coming from this. Sean Hannity is with me now. Sean, good morning to you. A lot of travel. Appreciate you doing this here, and we'll see you later tonight.
Good morning, guys.
At 10 o'clock Eastern Time.
Happy New Year.
Thank you, Sean, and to you as well. What do you think your interview added to this story? What do you think you cleared up or clarified?
You know, this interview went pretty much straight through, Bill, for about 90 minutes, and we covered so much different ground. There's so many unbelievable questions. Number one, about the state of journalism, what wasn't covered in the United States, what these emails revealed, his life. I mean, it's a nice picture in the background there, but I can tell you the Ecuadorian embassy is extraordinarily small. He's not been outside to get a breath of fresh air or sunlight in 4.5 years in the embassy, 6 years total. And he's doing it, he would tell you, on principle, and we covered all the ground as it relates to WikiLeaks, and he is extraordinarily adamant that, in fact, no state party, no government. As a matter of fact, I asked him, did you ever talk to Vladimir Putin? No. Did you ever talk to any of his surrogates? No. Did you ever talk to Donald Trump? No. Any of his surrogates? No. Would you have given this information, revealed this information, if it was about Donald Trump? Yes. So there's so many different things here that he is revealing, and not the least of which is that this entire narrative we have heard post-election, he's telling us is absolutely, positively false. I used words like manipulation and propaganda. He was a little more generous in his description of it. At one point, you know, when he's using the words about Barack Obama was acting lawyerly, I think it was a polite way of him saying he's lying and he's manipulating the story. And he talked at length about how he believed it was an attempt to delegitimize Trump's victory.
Now, a couple specific questions here. You've spent time with him now in person. A few weeks ago, you had him on Radio 2 for an interview. So you've gotten to know him much better than, well, any of us. John Bolton last hour said he doesn't believe a word he says. Do you?
I believe every word he says, to be perfectly honest. I have great respect for John Bolton. And here's the bottom line. What did he reveal here? Two things that I think come out of this that if we looked at it from the proper perspective, and there were things, look, I was a very early critic of him. He's well aware that I thought he was waging war on the United States. My opinion on it has evolved in large part because of what I have seen that he has done in 10 years. Nothing he has published has ever been proven false. Nobody's even questioned the veracity or truthfulness of what he's doing. He gets information, just like the New York Times got information about Donald Trump's taxes illegally. They still ran with the story. They still published the story. I'm convinced that any media outlet that was colluding with the Clinton campaign, they would have run with the story. So the two things what the United States ought to take out of WikiLeaks is, number one, as a country, we do not have cybersecurity, and if we don't fix it, we'll never have it. The second thing is I think he exposed at a level I never expected. Now, I'm 30 years in radio, Bill. My 21st year on the Fox News channel. I have been a staunch critic of government and government corruption all of those years. And what we learned in this election is how deeply corrupt, more corrupt than I think any of us would have imagined, the level of our politics is, and collusion with media outlets and campaigns. There is not objective journalism in America. And, of course, the media doesn't want to cover that story because it exposes them.
Yeah.
And when you see when you see CNN is feeding questions to Hillary Clinton before a debate, or they're asking the DNC for questions for Donald Trump, well, that's a level of corruption. That's trying to influence an election. One other point. If we're worried about influencing elections, why did Barack Obama take $350,000 from the State Department, fund a group in Israel, send his political operatives to Israel to try and defeat Prime Minister Netanyahu? I mean, there's a big double standard here.
This headline about him saying it was not a state actor or a state government or the Russian government, could it have been an arm that was working on behalf of Moscow?
Well, I was
did you ask him that specific question?
Every which way I could possibly ask that question, including a report that had come out in the Daily Mail about a friend of his that went on the record and said that the actual information was handed personally over in a wooded area near American University. And to me, it was a moment that he felt some frustration about, but he wouldn't confirm or deny it. And this was a source within the Democratic Party that was disillusioned because what WikiLeaks revealed about how they totally colluded and betrayed Bernie Sanders in the nomination process, and also what he felt was dishonest and corruption as it relates to the Clinton Foundation. So that's a story that I think had been underreported as well, because
I mentioned you spent 90 minutes with him. Just in the moment we have left here, Sean, this is one of your last questions to him about whether or not the President of the United States was telling the truth or how he was parsing his language, etc. This is how it went. Watch here.
He's acting like a lawyer. If you look at most of his statements, he doesn't say that. He doesn't say WikiLeaks obtained its information from Russia, worked with Russia.
He's saying Russia's trying to influence the U.S. elections.
Yes. So he and you also note that he doesn't say, from the statements that I've read, he doesn't say that Russia was trying to influence the election for Donald Trump.
There, in a nutshell, Sean, why is that so significant coming at the end of your time together?
Yeah, I think he was. I asked him to speak directly. What would you say to Hillary Clinton? What would you say to Barack Obama? What would you say to the incoming president, Donald Trump? You know, he has first of all, his knowledge of American politics is at a level that most constitutional scholars would admire. He's a person that knows our Constitution fully and completely. He's read the Federalist Papers. He understands American journalism. I thought it was a gracious way of saying that the president is purposefully lying and manipulating for political gain, which went back to an answer earlier, which was they were trying to delegitimize Donald Trump. But what I took out of it is, you know, he really sees the government is corrupt fundamentally. And his theory, which I happen to agree with, is that more transparency leads to more competency, and more competency leads to more faith in government. And his message basically to all three of them is open up the government to the extent that you can. He understands the need for covert operations and plausible deniability, but open it up more and you'll see more competency in government, which I think goes to the heart of what we've experienced the last 8 years, more secrecy than any other president in history.
We'll see you later tonight, okay? Version 1 tonight.
Good to
Sean, thanks for doing this. Watch Hannity tonight, part 1 of his exclusive in-person interview with the founder of WikiLeaks, right here on the Fox News channel. 10 o'clock Eastern time, your way later tonight. Some more segments on Wednesday and on Thursday later in the week. So fascinating stuff, and we'll see where it comes down.
Yep, we'll look to that tonight. Good to have Sean here with us this morning. So President-elect Donald Trump taking aim at the mayor of the deadliest city in America, suggesting Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel needs help protecting his own city. We will debate Mr. Trump's solution to that
Also, were you traveling over the holiday, were you? This flight had to make an emergency landing because of an outburst by one of the passengers on board. What he said and what was said in return. Next.
So the president-elect, Donald Trump, going off on the mayor of Chicago for a spike in gang violence. Mr. Trump suggesting that Rahm Emanuel isn't up to the challenge of protecting the city, tweeting this. Quote, Chicago murder rate is record-setting 4,331 shooting victims with 762 murders in 2016. By the way, that's an increase of 57% for the year. If the mayor can't do it, he goes on to say, he must ask for federal help. Guy Benson joins us now, political editor at townhall.com and a Fox News contributor. Julie Roginski is a Democratic strategist and Fox News contributor. Welcome to both of you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you guys. It's great to see you this morning. This is a very serious issue that plagues the city of Chicago. We've heard so much over the past couple of years about Black Lives Matter, about police violence, and relatively little about this huge issue, Julie. Why do you think that is?
I don't know why that is. For the people in Chicago who've suffered and lost loved ones, it's an issue that affects them every day and it should be talked about more. Look, there's no excuse, and this should not be a partisan issue for what is going on in Chicago. The federal government does have a role to play. As the president-elect has pointed out, I know that Mayor Emanuel apparently met with him, with President-elect Trump, and asked him for help as well a while back, so that's good. You know, any and all hands on deck. This is an epidemic, and there's no reason as to why the city of New York and the city of LA, both of which have seen not a resurgence of gun violence, but in fact have seen record lows in terms of gun deaths. Have the statistics they do, and Chicago has the statistics it does, and Chicago needs to take a look at best practices and get our hands on deck on this issue.
I mean, I think back to the Democratic convention guy and the mothers for the movement who have children who were injured or killed by police officers, and you wonder where the rest of the moms are whose children have been slaughtered in the streets of Chicago. It would be good to give them equal time in terms of the issue that is going on in the inner city there and elsewhere.
Yeah, but Chicago's particularly bad, as Julie just said. And if you look at the numbers, Chicago's murder rate, or the number of murders in that city, is higher than New York and LA combined last year. Yep. New York and LA are bigger cities than Chicago population-wise. And so when you look at this problem, and there have been a lot of reports on it, the Chicago police feel like they're on their heels. They feel like they are hamstrung. They feel like they are burdened with huge amounts of paperwork and political pressure. And I've never been one to say you should never criticize the police. I think police ought to be criticized when they do something wrong. Every case should be taken on its own based on the facts of the case. But in this culture that we're seeing increasingly in places like Chicago, where the cops feel like they're getting it from all angles, they're taking a step back. They're being more tentative in their job of law enforcement as a result, and you're seeing communities suffer the tragic, lethal consequences.
It's been documented by Heather McDonald in her book quite closely. And here's Gary McCarthy last night, the former police chief there, on 60 Minutes. Watch.
It doesn't seem that filling out a 2-page report is that onerous.
Oh, sure it is. It could take you up to 45 minutes. And one of the things in policing that we've been trying to do is knock back the amount of time that officers spend doing paperwork and get them out doing more proactive things to prevent crime.
Yeah. Julie, President Obama is going to address the city of Chicago in one of his final speeches. What do you think his legacy will be on improving our inner cities?
Well, in certain inner cities, certainly if you look at places like New York, for example, where I live, his legacy is quite good. It's really not a federal issue. I know the federal government does have a role to play. It certainly did in the 90s under Bill Clinton in reducing violence. But this is really a city-by-city issue, as Guy so aptly pointed out. Why is it that the city of New York and the city of Los Angeles, also governed by Democratic mayors under a Democratic president, why have they seen the crime statistics that they have? And Chicago, which is governed by a Democratic mayor under a Democratic president, has seen the statistics it has. So again, this is not a federal issue, although the federal government does have a very significant role to play. And I strongly urge the president-elect to sit down with Mayor Emanuel and to work this out. And there is something that both of them can do in tandem. But this is not the time to sit there and play partisan blame games. It's the time to sit there and try to figure out what's going on. and to solve it, because mothers are losing their children on a daily basis. It is inexcusable.
It is inexcusable. I think everybody agrees on that. The work is cut out for them in the city of Chicago, and the rate has gone up in many other cities across the country, regardless of the fact that it's improved somewhat in the two big cities that you both mentioned. So it is a nationwide issue. Julie, thank you very much. Guy, thank you. Good to have you both here.
Thank you. Jenna Lee's coming up next, 11 minutes away. Quick preview of happening now. Hello, Jenna. Good morning.
Hey there, Bill. The new Congress is sworn in today. What's on for the first 100 days? The GOP takes control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. Plus, you've seen those insane lines at customs from coast to coast, a nightmare for travelers, but it raises new questions about screening at the nation's airports and our national security. We're going to tackle that top of the hour.
Jenna, thanks. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Hey, you know about smart cars, right? They're on their way. But what about a smart highway? What some states are trying to build today to make your life safer.